ready to file except for one thing.
Good morning, everybody. Mariah's ready to file except for one thing, which is the first thing you heard on our stream today.
So good morning.
Yep. And George is already here. There's George's head. George's head. Arg.
Better than his butt.
Nope. That's George's butt right here. There's George's butt. There. You all get George's butt right off the bat. There we go. There we go. Our visit from George. We start off. Good morning, Guy. George's butt. Says Bob. Good morning, Bob. I mean, like, we have to have our priorities. George's butt is a priority in this particular thing. I don't know how you don't get us banned from YouTube. You're such an exhibitionist. How are you doing? Oh, Brent. It's Brent, not Bob.
Good morning, Brent.
I just started with the B words. I don't know Brent very well, though, so that explains very many things. Like, I don't know Bob very well either. I've only known them for at least a couple of decades. So, I could be excused. Hi. You're so cute. You're very cute. I'm not getting any work done because you're so cute. You're a fuzzy goofball. So, morning, Brent. Switch to this so at least we can get started when we get started. Started when we get started. The funny part, Brent, is that I said Bob, but then I was going to ask you about your printers, which means I knew which person I was talking about. Just didn't have the right name. Yay, Phasia. Right. Because over the weekend, I cleaned my printer because it hadn't been cleaned. And then I did something very interesting, and now I'm regretting my life choices. So that was the thing. So there was still a small amount of resin in the vat. And so I was like, well, right? Because you know that's exactly what happened. Small amount of resin left in the vat. So I decided to take the resin out, and we can't throw away the resin as it is. You have to harden it first. So that's no problem at all. Because the resin has been now contaminated. It's got dust and stuff in it, and we don't want that. So I was just going to pour it into a plastic baggie and set it out on the patio, on the porch out here, and just let it sit there for the day. And I did that Sunday morning. So Sunday morning, I dumped all the resin into this little plastic bag and set it out on the patio. Well, it comes about noon, and I look out there, and the resin it looks like there's wet around the outside of the plastic bag. Well, I'm like, did I sit it in a snowbank? Because I probably did. And so it was like, well, okay. So I go outside and I try to pick it up, and the bag tears at the resin point. And I guess the resin, while hardening, had eaten through the plastic bag and then glued itself to the patio. So now it's stuck out there. I regret my life choices. Luckily, we're replacing all of the boards in the patio. So it's stuck to a board that is rotted through and needs to be thrown away anyway. So that's no issue. But it's still one of those, what do I do with the resin now? Can't really throw it away. It's stuck to the patio. I just thought that was particularly funny. So anyway, I have a small little block of resin now on my patio. But it does make me think the next time I do this, I'm going to put it out there on a metal sheet so that I can pop it off the metal sheet when it hardens to throw it away. Because wood is extraordinarily porous, and that means that it is, you just need the best. You're like, I really want stitches. Wood is phenomenally porous, and so all of the resin leaked through the bag and then leaked into the wood, and now it's got little tendrils in there. It's all full of tendril. So anyway, entertaining. Just that's a thing. That's where we are today. And 'tis the way that the world goes. Thermal runaway issues. Wow. All right. So this morning before show, I went on ahead and updated the master file just a little bit. I went in ahead and changed out my co.fi with paypal.me because I'd rather have it go straight to my PayPal account regardless, because everything goes through my PayPal account now. When you buy a comic book, it goes through my PayPal account and stuff like that. So PayPal is extraordinarily useful. And so I'm on board. And I don't mind throwing a penny or two towards PayPal. They're doing me a great service. And the funny part is people are like, PayPal's fees are exorbitant. And I'm like, you guys haven't had a real bank account. So Mariah's doing the taxes. And apparently there is a classification now for streamer. Like, you're a streamer. That's what you do. And all income coming in on the stream is taxable, of course. That makes some sense. It's not a problem. But it is fascinating that streamer is a classification, and apparently you're self-employed, and it means that you are taxed at 15% for your first amount of however much you make, and then it's 25% after a certain amount, and then it's 28% and stuff like that. And so that's fascinating. It's also Twitch streamers specifically. Like, nobody else streams anywhere else. You don't stream on Facebook or YouTube. I'm like, how did Twitch get the honor, Cracks me up. So yeah, I went through and fixed some things. Fixed the thing down here. There's a couple of open layers that had nothing on them, so I deleted those so they could be pulled out. And then I pulled the backdrop to one unit, because really now all I'm doing is putting an overlay on it and dropping the unit and that, or the background, and then this is all. Now I can use PNGs. That's why I'm out on Twitch, I guess. Now I'm using PNGs to do all this stuff, so shrug. And there are other things, like I had a white background that had to be chopped up. The truth of the matter is now I always do some kind of background. Either it's the watercolor backgrounds, or it's some of the backgrounds that I have from Springs. So there's never a blank background. So I was like, why do I have this white thing that has to be deleted every time? Hopefully that cut a number of our pieces out so we don't have to mess with those. That's what I'm hoping for. So a number of the bits and pieces that were in here can be wiped out now. So, all right. Now I'm going to open up my wheel of tropes. And look at some of my tropes here. There we go. We have a number of things. I feel like taxes are a thing to talk about. Oh, that's fair. That's the one thing that cracks me up about YouTube and annoys me. And that is that YouTube can't be blocked because everybody puts all of their business stuff up on it. So you can watch as many streamers as you want on YouTube because nobody will block YouTube. Because if they block YouTube, you can't do that free video on how to fix the widget that your boss is going to send you when you're like, how do I fix this stupid widget? And he sends you a YouTube video, which is somewhat ingenious. But then there's the nefarious side of it, which is my child is constantly screwing around in class watching YouTube videos that he shouldn't watch. And the teacher calls me and says, hey, you got to fix this. And I'm like, I can block YouTube. Well, no, don't block YouTube because I have him go to these YouTube videos in class. And I'm like, so you want me to just yell at him? I mean, what do you want me to do here? All right. I really don't care whether you're on. By the way, I don't know if it matters, but I don't. Right? I mean, that's what I was thinking too. I'm like, that's a brilliant strategy, but also disturbing. Looks like a basket, like a bassinet. That's even funnier. Hi. 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 How are you? This is like the second visit in so many seconds. And though I absolutely love you and you are definitely part of my streams, we do have to get work done at some point here. So be cognizant and aware, huh? Boop. Right? That's totally what it boils down to. Somebody's downstairs doing taxes. The other person's up here doing work. He's probably pestered mom, and mom has kicked him out. And he goes and kids at school, so what's he got? What's a cat to do? What's a cat to do? Huh? What's a cat to do? When he does stuff like this, he puts his butt straight on the monitor, and all I can think about is that there was once a oatmeal comic about when you think about it, your cat's butt has touched everything. And it was one of those little oatmeal animated comics where the cat's butt's going boom, 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 like on everything. With this great look on his face as his butt's going bump, 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 and touching stuff. Your pillow of your bed, the table. And the truth of the matter is, if you've got a fuzzy butt like this guy, you just kind of get used to that and accept that that's a reality. And you accept that it's a reality. But, and that's your butt we're talking about, I'm going to have to get back to work. You can go over there and look. You can go look. Go look. Go look. I opened the window just for you. You should go look. Yeah, I love you too. Go look. Here. I'll help you out. There. Tax joke would be funny, but I wonder if there's a way I can hit the UFO thing we're talking about now. So many UFO things going on. Yeah, might not work as well today. I think a UFO thing seems like a more appropriate thing to do. Maybe something like no, I know what it is. We're playing this game where we keep going back to undeveloped planets and pretend like we're alien spaceships and see whether we show up on the news or not. And then it's, well, we're kind of over it now. Why? Because we keep getting misidentified as Chinese weather balloon or Chinese spy balloons. Now that would be funny. We think this is our last run. We keep getting misidentified as Chinese spy balloons. That's it. We're on it. We're on it. We're on it. This is the way this works. This is the way. This is the way. Thing is, I think these guys should be aliens, like real, honest to goodness aliens. It's not on the thingy. You just got it. Weird. Oh. These are Bob and Tim. Clearly, these are, oh, they should use telepathy like everybody else. It's funnier that way. Nobody has a mouth in my comic, so it seems kind of out of place that these guys would. I mean, they're already somewhat out of place because they're not robots. Well, that we know of, I guess. Not with that attitude. Not for your species. He's just doing this like he's talking, should probably like. I've been doing the third panel being sort of this silhouette, and I've been enjoying kind of doing that. Although interesting, you really are lonely, aren't you? You're having problems with this today, aren't you? I like that they're in jumpsuits. This is the best part about this whole thing, is that they've got flight wings. It's Bob and Tim. Yeah, but he gave up once he realized I was actually working, and not as interested in scritching him. That's all good. It's all good. I'm getting work done. As long as you're getting work done, we're doing our jobs. Nope. Time to stand up. All right. It's always okay for you to work. And listening. Always a good thing. I just don't have much to say this morning. I like the fact that it has a laptop in here. There. It is definitely an Alienware laptop. Inside jokes are the best. I mean, these will be behind my aliens, but I'll see them from a couple. I'm actually probably going to use this ship a couple of more times because I think it's funny. So I'll spend a little bit of time on this. I think it's cool. There we go. All spaceships need fins. I'm just thinking. Really? You're kidding, Brent? Really? Do they have a logo of an alien head? And I think that's why this is the joke. It'll be one of those inside jokes. Maybe I'll actually type it up so that it doesn't look like it's handwritten. Yeah, that's what I seem to remember that too. Thanks for not being helpful. This is their Google. This is how they find stuff. It's like Google Maps. This is their Alienware. Right? There. I'm easily entertained. Oh man, I'm definitely easily entertained. I'm probably more easily entertained than I need to be, but that's all right. Nope. a certain amount of gleeful fun always to drawing interesting machines. I always have fun with this part. Machines are the bestest things. It's funny, I never really thought about how much Springs is just the perfect comic strip for me to draw. I would, I just on a whim came up with it, and it was such a thing that I never really thought about. I was like, well, never gave it a second thought. I just was like, well, kind of want to do something similar to Peanuts, but obviously a bunch of kids in playing baseball seems like a silly premise. So then I was like, well, I know what I'll do. I will I'll do robots because robots are fun. Robots are always fun. I didn't even really think about it. I didn't think of, well, robots are ideal because you're actually really kind of into machines and stuff like that, and that makes some sense. I like the fact that this guy's a tail dragger. That cracks me up more than anything. Like totally a tail dragger. Little wheels, a little tail dragging wheel. It's like sitting on its little tail dragging wheel. I like the post you posted earlier about all the drill sergeants yelling at the guy, and it was like, "Why we don't care? We're not worried about getting yelled at work." It's funny. It's funnier because I would have a hard time keeping a straight face with all of those drill sergeants yelling at me because they're so ridiculous and over the top. It was so over the top. It was so strange. And they would just get madder because I would be laughing at them, and that would be the worst. And I just make it all worse. It would get so much. It'd be terrible. It'd be like a disaster. I'd be like, this is why this is that didn't go well. It'd be horrible. Yep, I'd have to totally keep a straight face the entire time, and it'd be so hard. I'd be like, because I know that if I start laughing, it's just going to get worse. Okay, as much fun as this is becoming, I'm going to have to call it at some point here. There we go. I feel like that's an adorable spaceship. I like it. It's good. It's a good spaceship. It's all like bizarrely adorable and fluffy. I like it. As all good spaceships should be. Because I mean, really, I think that's where that is. Like lined up with the front there. This is obviously a little nose thing. So this guy needs to be like right here. There. Perfect. I've always said that one of the reasons why the military and I would never get along very well was because I would have changed the rotation of the Earth for all the push-ups I would have had to have done. The more I read what Bregman is saying in Humankind, the more I realize we just have entire systems that are so messed up and so bizarre and so counterintuitive that we have to make even more bizarre systems in order to make up for it, you know? And I keep thinking about this all the time because I totally have joined the Navy. I would have been an awesome mechanic. I would have had fun working on planes. I would have enjoyed every last bit of it. I would have been happy on big ships. I would have thought the ships were cool. But I would not have done so good with the yelling part. You know what I mean? Like, being neurodivergent, I knew. I just get yelled at all the time, and it would have been awful, and I would have just hated it, and it would have been a horrible experience. However, left of my own devices, I would have been a phenomenal Navy mechanic. I would have had fun. I could have even been a phenomenal Navy pilot. I could have had fun with that. I could have been a good Marine pilot. I could have flown, the Hawker Harriers, and then just been so phenomenally in love with those aircraft. And it's one of those things where you're like, the system is set up weird. We don't work to people's strengths. We yell at them, make them do stuff that may be at their strengths or maybe not, and then throw money at them. Sure. I'm not regretting things. This isn't a regret moment. This isn't like I regret my life, because I actually am very pleased with where I rolled out. But only because now I'm somewhat stable. My life is somewhat stable. We could use a lot more money, certainly, but the business, we just did the taxes, and the business is only a little bit underwater. We almost broke even. Now, granted, my company doesn't cost a whole lot. I think it cost a total of about $3,000 all last year. But I made like $2,500. That's not bad. It's still miserable if you think about like making a living. I can't afford to have a house while making $2,500. Certainly. But it wasn't bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's not horrible. I did fine. And I'm less stressed. Like, the biggest stressor I have right now is, will I get these things done on time? And that's really not that big of a stressor in the grand scheme of things, because it needs to be done on time whether I stress out about it or not. These things still have to be done. They can't not be done, So we still have to do them. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, I'm not doing bad in life at all. I actually feel like I'm doing pretty good. I finally have gotten into a position where I'm doing the things that I'm suited for, which is teaching people and making stories. Those are the things I'm suited for. Now I just have to figure out how to make money off of it so that I don't, lose a house, or, so that my kid can go to college and, stuff like that. We just have to make the money work. But as far as living a life, I seem to be doing relatively well. But I do routinely think about how the system is set up such that, like, it's like I was kind of ended up doing not necessarily not what I'd want to do or whatever, but I'm just saying I could have been. There are a lot of places where, just a little bit of compassion in the real world would have gone a long way. Just a little bit of understanding would have put us in a much different spot. And it's just interesting. That's all. I'm determined to do that and really mess with my world. Yeah. And it's only really frustrating to me because I'm reading this book and realizing just how many of our systems are designed on theories come up by somebody who had no experience and no qualifications, but wrote some paper somewhere, and everybody went, yeah, that's it. We'll change our entire prison system because of that. And like other places in the world, they didn't have that influence, and so they went a different path, and they're having much, much, much better success. And this book's talking right now specifically about, like, as I was just saying, the prison system, which this guy came up with a theory that, oh man, I am determined to hit the space bar or the shift, and shift gives me the wrong critter. But what had happened with prisons, and it's actually kind of sad because I know people think that it's for profit, and I'm sure that's what's perpetuating it. But it didn't start that way. That's not what started it. What started prison problems here was that we had institutions, and then in the 60s, all of the institutions were horrible. They were horrible places. And we had all this civil unrest going on during the 60s. And so they decided to overhaul the system. And for a while, they had this model where they took prisoners and they put them in nice rooms with, it was effectively a hotel, and they worked on rehabilitating them and putting them back into society as working, operating people. And then this guy went to Congress and said that wasn't working, but he didn't base it on anything. He just said it wasn't working, and that's it. Why didn't it beep? I don't know why it didn't beep. It didn't do the boop boop when you showed up, which is usually my way of telling that you showed up. It did that to David a couple of times too.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fine, except that you're on monitor number 3 up here, so it's hard to see you when you show up. You should text me if you're stuck outside.
But I was in private chat.
Yeah, except the private chat doesn't make any noise.
Well,
So-
it's supposed to.
It's supposed to, but that's the problem. It's like, it didn't do the boop boop when you joined, and then you were private chatting and it didn't do any boop boop when it did that either. So you just kept saying hello to me, which was
In
fine,
various
except that
languages.
it wasn't saying anything. So
Yeah, I was actually getting into Italian, and then I was gonna go German on you.
No, don't go German on me. That'd be
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah, and if
What
German
would
didn't
happen
work,
if you went
I would
German
have
on me?
Ukrainian.
All right. So anyway, what I was saying was I've been reading about how our prison system works, and I'm dismayed.
Well, our prison system is, as I've had family go in and out of it, I can tell you right now, it is not set up for rehabilitation.
Well, that's the thing. That's what he was saying. I'm still reading that book, and he researched how our prisons got to this setup, because, of course, in Norway, they stick everybody in a commune effectively, and then the police, there are people in there who work with them. They work their problems out, and then they rehabilitate them, and then they release them to society again, and they never come back. Whereas here, we lock them in a cube, put them behind cells, yell at them a lot, and then release them, and they come right back. And his whole thing is, amazingly, if you treat them like human beings, they learn the error of their ways. They get jobs, they come back and stuff like that, and everything works.
I equate the prison system like Batman in Arkham. Everyone returns to Arkham.
Yep.
But if you go to Flash's district where he takes care of his, stuff, you find out that Flash basically sits there and goes, "So, you doing okay?" to his villains. And they're like, "No, not really." And he'll actually state, like, "You're off your meds again, aren't you?"
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be like, "Yeah." And he'll probably be like, "Are you gonna turn yourself in?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, in about a half an hour."
Yep.
Like, it's a completely different systematic way they go to prison with that superhero.
Sure. Well, and that's what this guy is saying, is he's like, what happened? And he said, so I went and looked into what happened. And that's what I love about this book. He doesn't just say something's wrong. He says something's wrong. Here are the statistics that show that objectively this isn't working. How did it get here? Here's what I found out by going through the history. Da, 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 da. And it's a fascinating thing, because he's not just saying, you know what we should do? We should fix this thing. You know what I mean? Like, he's not just, but some of the stuff he's discovering is making me go, oh, crap. So what had happened was, in the 60s, they reformed all of our stuff, because we were putting people into institutions where they pretty much just squandered away and died. So after the 60s, what we did was we reformed it all, and we had these really cool prisons where they put you effectively in a hotel room and then reformed you and everything like that. And that was the point. But then in like the late 60s, this guy went to Congress and said, that's not working. It's failing. And he didn't do any research. He just assumed that prisoners are bad, so this won't work. And the problem is that Congress ate it up. They were like, oh yeah, it's not working. He brought no charts. He brought no information. He brought nothing. And the truth was that at that time, it was 46% of the people that were going in were coming out and becoming working members of society. And that was within 5 years of reform. So the numbers were going up. But then he went to Congress and said it's not working. And so they stopped it, and they turned around, and this guy named Wilson, there was a guy before it, actually. There's a guy before it who he did the analysis on this and said it wasn't working because it needed more time, and everybody cut the because it needed more time off and just said it wasn't working. And that's what this guy, the other guy, went to Congress with and told them that. So then they stopped it. on this other guy's recommendation and changed prisons back to just four concrete walls and bars.
If you do more research into it, there is a case study that was done in Arizona because for a while they had a very high turnover ratio of people not going back.
Right.
And the funny thing is the prisoners that went to the prisons that were in this state were controlled by one person at the time. This particular person made it mandatory that all prisoners wear pink underwear. They had to wear the literal striped uniforms. They forced them to go outside and work in rock quarries, and sleep in tents in the middle of Arizona heat. And they basically made it hell on earth for them. And lo and behold, none of the prisoners, when they left, wanted to go back. Because their form of reform was treat them as prisoners and teach them that if they come back, this is what they're going to get in this state.
Yeah, except that didn't fix the problem. That's what
It
this
didn't
guy
fix the
said.
problem, no. It's like a lot of them ended up going off into different states and actually still committed crimes there, but they didn't go back to Arizona and do crime.
Right?
Is what I'm saying.
I mean, hey, works for Arizona, doesn't
Yeah,
really work
but
for
the thing
anybody
is,
else, but works
we
for
haven't-
Arizona.
Yeah, we haven't really had true reform in a very long time in America for prisons.
Well, and that's so the whole point that this guy is coming up with is there are two ways to treat people. You can treat people like they are guilty until proven innocent, or you can treat people like they're innocent until proven guilty. And he said, for some reason, the default mode for humans is guilty until proven innocent.
Mhm.
So, and he's saying what happens is that people respond a whole lot better to the other way. And, you know, it's the compassion thing. And I'm sure that works. If you, I mean, honestly, let me be realistic. If I beat the crap out of you every time you came onto this show, you'd leave, right? I mean, like, you know, if every time you came on, oh God, it's Pepper, I don't even like it. You know what I mean? You'd be like, fine, I'll go somewhere else. You know?
Fine, I'll go somewhere else. If you don't want me here, that's
Right,
fine.
exactly. So I mean, like,
Bye, everyone.
So it
I'm
works.
gonna leave.
I mean, certainly, if I wanted to encourage you to not, you know, to not be on my show, let's say you annoy me or something. I don't know. I'll make up something. But whatever's the story, sure, the easiest way would just be to insult you until you go away. But that doesn't fix Pepper. That just solves my problem. You know what I mean? Like, let's say you have an annoying habit of going on the straw there. With the straw, that's so annoying. Yeah. Oh, these. There you go. Dang it! Hate when Pepper does that.
And my new stream is nothing but me doing this.
Right.
And every single time I do it, it says Guy can suck it on the screen.
But the point is, sure, I could annoy you until you leave. Or I could say, hey, Pepper, why don't you, could you stop doing that noise? Because it's really annoying. And odds are good that you will stop doing that noise.
I was just trying to back up your point that you were trying to make.
Yeah. Well, Arizona's, that's the problem. That works, but it doesn't work for the right reasons. That's what he's saying.
No, it
only
doesn't.
works to humiliate and dehumanize a person, but it doesn't work for the right reasons.
Right. I mean, I know I've had family members going into prison due to addiction issues.
Sure.
And other various things that they have done. I have had childhood friends that have gone into the prison system as well, starting fairly young, actually, in juvenile.
Yeah.
I've had, and these are people in like the childhood friends. I specifically say childhood friends. We are no longer friends as adults.
Sure.
Um, because there are times where you have to basically go, okay, well, this person is definitely not someone I want to be around anymore. One too many cases of arson kind of proves that.
Did you copy the wrong layer? You totally did.
Yes, you did. But also at the same time, statistically, if you put a child in juvenile detention or like juvie, they will end up in adult prison in America.
Right.
Because they grow up going in and out of juvenile detention, and eventually they go in and out of jail.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Case in point, my mom had a neighbor for a long time that lived at the very end of our block. They moved in there when I was around 13 years old, so mid-90s. They moved in, they had some problems, there was a divorce involved, and it led to those particular neighbors. I was friends with their son for a while. Their son went into juvenile detention, came back out, seemed to fix his life up, but he's now currently in jail, I think, because he decided to make meth in the house that my mom's neighbor was living in.
Sure.
And they were finally kicked out.
Problem.
Yeah. It's not something that it's not something that I really care to really know. Of the members of my community growing up as a kid, of the male members that I considered friends as a child.
Just saying, guys, we're talking about
90
male members again.
Yeah, I know. 90% of them have or are still incarcerated.
Right.
That is the type of neighborhood I came from.
And that sounds like a problem with the community, not a problem with the people.
And
that's actually what he's saying.
And my mom tried her best, to improve the community. She still does. I mean, she works with police officers on occasion. She was and we were around police officers all of our life, because when I was born, my dad was a cop, so it wasn't abnormal for us to be around a police officer or two. But the thing is we were known as the house that basically was told everything that based off of what the police knew. And if there was a police involvement in any of the neighbors on the block, my mom was blamed.
Your mom.
And my mom never snitched on her neighbors. They could be growing weed in the backyard and my mom would have never snitched. But they blame my mom because they know that she works with police officers.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
So,
when you have a suspicious community about people who are trying to improve it, makes it even worse, because then they start targeting the person trying to improve things, and it makes it double dangerous for the people trying to improve things, because the people who don't want change make it very apparent they do not like you.
Yeah. So
what I was trying to get at is sometimes the community works against the changes that need to be done too. It's not just the fact that police officers have to go in and cart people off. So,
well, yes. The point, I mean, all of the things he was talking about in this book are important things that were like statistically showing that different things occurred. For example, statistically, he showed that smaller police communities, smaller police groups, smaller police teams
Mm-hmm.
were much more effective than the big police teams, because the smaller police teams would go into a community, they'd know everybody, everybody would know the police officers, everybody would be talking to each other, and when things started to go wrong, there were two things that he discovered. One, if there was a super draconian strict rule set, then nobody would talk. But if it was hey, little Tommy over there, he's been kind of setting fire to things out in the yard, then the cops would go over and say, hey, don't set fire to your house though, or anything. Setting fires is cool. Set your fires over here. Don't set them over in the house. Is there a problem? Can we talk to you? Is there something, you know what I mean? Like, they were more likely to stop problems before they started, rather than wait till Tommy burned down the local furniture store and then had to throw him in jail. So they were more likely to do that kind of thing and solve those problems internally, rather than, because that was actually something I was talking about this whole thing. My buddy who I went to school with, who became a principal and was a principal down in the Springs. And he just recently is going to go to jail because one of his kids had done a bomb threat, and instead of turning the kid in like he's legally required to do, he took the kid to lunch and talked the kid down from wanting to blow up things, and figured out what the problem was and started solving the problem. And the police are really mad because he's supposed to have turned the kid in, where they would have locked the kid away and thrown him in jail and used that as a scare tactic to prevent any further kids from bomb threatening. And so he's going to end up going to jail for a while because he did the right thing, because the law says he should have turned the kid in and had them lock the kid away.
Right.
And that's because that's the nature that this guy, Wilson, or whatever his name was, believes, which is that if you scare the crap out of enough people, they won't do bad. The problem is you're not solving the problem.
Well, the thing is we have multiple stories from childhood into adulthood, across language barriers, across every which way from Sunday, that say you should not lead nations, communities, whatnot, politics with fear. The moment you start doing that, you're going to not just alienate your entire community and your people, but you're going to make them to the point where they now fear you, and then they start dividing into groups.
Right.
And those groups become problems.
Yeah, we've got like warning stories everywhere.
Yeah, we have that going on right now.
Yep. That's what he's saying, is that part of the problem is that we now have it set up so that
it also, I also want to reiterate, the community I grew up in, around my mom's house, I was one of probably a handful of white families in that neighborhood. And a lot of the police officers...
That's the other issue that he's talking about, is that he says that disproportionately police action is occurring against I literally used to have to walk with one of my friend's younger brothers, and he was also my friend, and we were stopped by the police because I was walking next to him. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he's African American.
Right. But that's what he was saying, was that there's a disproportionate number of people who are of the Black communities who are arrested, and that doesn't help any, because then the African American communities don't respond well to police, and when they don't, then they get arrested. Right. He's like, so this is becoming sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy because they don't trust authority. The authority is not trustworthy, and therefore it becomes disproportionate in the reactions that occur, and you end up with problems where this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It continues to go back and forth and back and forth. As long as the community is not respecting the authority, then the authority, they buck the authority all the time. And as long as the authority acts disrespectful, they aren't respected. And the problem is you can handle this one of two ways. And that's what this whole thing was about. You can force respect, which is what you were talking about in Arizona, where you scare the crap out of people until they respect you, but they don't ever respect you. They just behave. They just do what you say. That won't fix the problem. So what's happening is school of thought.
What I forgot to actually mention, the one good thing that came out of that whole thing that guy was doing, was that people who normally were working against one another in a normal situation of a prison setup that we now know in America, so like they started noticing that it broke down the walls and barriers and forced them to talk to one another about the issues that they were having.
Yeah, but
and
I would definitely say
noticed,
that's a side effect.
Right, but when they noticed those same people got out of the prison system, they maintained contact, and I'm talking like people that used to hate each other now are still talking to one another and everything like that. And so for those that stayed in Arizona, there's a lot of those people who actually supported one another in their integration back into society.
Well, yeah.
They shared that experience. So there was a small glimmer of good that came out of it, but it wasn't 100% of the time.
Right. Well, and that part of the problem is that's what he was saying about this, is that there was a specific guy in New York who was the New York chief of police in the 90s. And the guy who created this theory, it's called the broken window theory. And that is, if you break a window, then within a week, that house will turn into, it'll be covered in vandalism and it'll be destroyed. And within 2 weeks, there will be people living in it who are vagrants. And within 4 weeks, it'll be a drug den. And that's called the broken window theory. Well, the guy who came up with it had no proof of that. He didn't actually do a study. He just observed a house. And the thing is that what they have discovered since then is that was indicative of the problems in that neighborhood. In good neighborhoods, when a window is broken, the community actually works together to figure out what to do about the broken window. And so it's a different thing. And the bad neighborhoods are only bad because they've lost sort of a certain amount of respect for their own neighborhood, which is brought about from an external force, not an internal force. That's not internally driven. What he was saying was that
you're not wrong with that analysis. That is
right, but people
people
believed it, and so what they did was they decided to. This started with the New York Transit Authority. They decided to be absolutely draconian. If you're smoking in a no smoking zone, you went to jail. They actually started to arrest people for they started with, if you didn't have the $1.25 to be on the New York Transit and tried to slide through there, you'd go to jail. So nobody did that anymore. That stopped that. But then it was, if you, we're on the wrong layer. if you then the next thing was if you they started to anyway they brought crime down like 70% really quick, and they brought vandalism down and everything like that. The problem was that they also started giving bonuses to the cops for getting people. You know, if you caught people, they'd give you a bonus. And so what ended up happening was they started to, it became a results-based system. People were getting arrested for eating donuts on the benches in the subway. But what was not happening was nobody was talking about murders or rapes or anything like that, because that screwed up their numbers. So they stopped reporting those and they stopped dealing with them, and everybody started. So in other words, crime went down to almost nothing because people were raping people and nobody was able to report it because nobody would listen, because they didn't want that to screw up their numbers. So because of the results-based thing, so then they took all these numbers to Congress and said, see, it works. If you just arrest everybody, it works. But the real numbers underneath that were that people were getting away with murder literally, so that you, and he backs all of this up with actual numbers. There's like all this information in there. He's not making it up out of whole cloth. This really happened. The worst part is that this guy was so successful, they sent him to LA to work on LA's problems. And then he came back to New York. And it wasn't until 2015 that they started to realize something was wrong. And now they're starting to realize something is wrong. And it's because now you have riots going on, because literally it was disproportionate. The Black communities are already feeling oppressed. So they're already being snarky and, sharp and just being generally rude, which makes total sense. They've been oppressed for this whole time. So they were getting arrested all the time, which brought up the numbers, then brought up the belief that Black people were worse than white people because they were always in prison. Well, it's because they're always in prison. And so they started to get rude, rightfully so. If I stuck you in prison all the time for like sneezing, you'd get mad at me too. But then the riots started in 2014, 2015. That's when we started seeing the BLM and Antifa and stuff like that coming up. And all of that was a result of this draconian belief system that if you punish people enough, they'll be scared and won't go back to prison, which didn't work. In the big scale of things, all it really did was they just doctored the numbers. This guy, by the way, is Norwegian. He's got no dog in our race. So, in fact, this entire book is translated from Nordic. So, I mean, like everything he's talking about it from a global perspective, not a US perspective. He's not an American. So he's got no reason to, pull a line here. It's just that things work better in Norway. And he started with, why do things work better in Norway than they do in the United States? Or Japan, or because he's on Japan's case too, because Japan's got the same theory, which is they've got a 99% conviction rate, and they're very proud of that. And the reason is because they'll pull your fingernails out until you finally admit to the crime, even if you didn't commit.
I mean, the one good thing about America, and I'm trying to be as diplomatic with this as possible.
Right.
Okay, we've come a long way in certain areas of the justice system.
We totally have.
Especially when it comes to coercion.
He's not trying to knock us specifically. He's saying one person altered and changed it with no numbers to back it. And it's like, if one person can do that, one person can undo it. You know what I mean? Like, but the problem is that we have that negativity bias that he's been talking about, which is we by default assume the worst when the numbers don't back that up. all you end up with is what I call the red light clause, where you have that red light that you keep seeing, so you just assume that all the time that light's red. But in reality, it's not. It's just red some of the time. And so, it's an interesting thing. It's changing my entire opinion on the world, but I also have hope, because really, if one guy went to Congress and convinced Congress that people are by default unredeemable and cannot be redeemed, and you might as well just lock them away forever, then one guy can go to Congress and say that's all BS. Look at Norway, right? And the problem is that he says that, as he's talking about, the biggest problem is people won't look at the numbers on that one, because they'll keep saying the US is a bigger country. And he's like, it's not that, it's the per capita. Mm-hmm. You don't look at the numbers as a whole, because of course Norway is a smaller country. He says you look at the per 100,000 people.
Yeah.
And it's a number that's routinely thrown around, and that is, Americans make up 25% of the world's incarcerated people. We hold a quarter of the world's incarcerated people. That's a broken number. That's not good. That's not good at all. And he's saying that
there are people who will come from other countries just to get into our prison system, because they know they will go back to it.
They know that what?
There are people who will come to the United States and they will get into the prison system here before they are extradited back to their country, and they will try to stay in the prison systems here as long as they can. And I know that sounds really weird, but it happens a lot in Florida, unfortunately.
That doesn't even make sense.
I know it doesn't make sense, but it's okay. So,
what's the logic behind it? What are they trying to accomplish?
So someone basically came to the United States. Okay, when I was a kid, they committed a crime. They were a foreigner. They were sentenced to prison in America.
Mm-hmm.
And the case was I guess it was bigger. I don't know. They were reporting it in Florida. So, the arrest was in Florida. Everything's being reported. The guy was from one of the Caribbean islands, and he had done nothing wrong in his home country. He had came to America, and and he did one crime, and he was in there, and they were debating on whether or not to send him back to his home country in the Caribbean and have them.
Title 15 requires that we do that,
right? And
we have a law that says that they're extradited.
And somehow he managed to convince a lawyer to work for him to keep him in the United States.
Okay, that's starting to sound like either A, I
was a child when this was going on, so
sure.
I don't know, I'm fuzzy on the details because,
But either way, that sounds very edge case. That's not something that normally happens.
But it wasn't the first time it happened in Florida.
Well, yeah, but we have a law that specifically says you don't do that.
Right, and you're supposed to be extradited.
If you're caught doing a crime, that's what ICE is all about.
Right, and they're supposed to be extradited back to the country.
We have an entire division of the government that does this.
Yeah.
A very expensive division of the government, I might add.
So, but that particular person, I think the reasoning for him not to want to go back to his home country is his children were born in the United States.
Yeah. And
his wife or girlfriend or whatever is from the United States. So had he been extradited, he wouldn't have been allowed back into the United States.
So up until Trump's reforms on our immigration laws, he would have been considered fast tracked for immigration.
Yeah, he would have.
So, I
He
mean,
had a lawyer.
Trump's reforms changed all of that, but only slightly, and not as much as the liberals want to go on about.
Yeah.
But Trump's reforms only changed that because of anchor babies was being tossed around. That's the infamous anchor baby argument, which
Yeah,
is you
but
come
this
over,
isn't-
you knock
like,
up
this
somebody,
isn't a
you
new-
have a baby, and then you're required to stay because of the law.
This isn't a new case, though, that I'm talking about. This is like late 90s.
Right. That's why I'm
about.
saying this has to be some kind of weird edge case because
Yeah.
in the 90s,
Well, I mean,
he would have
Florida
been
had
fine.
a lot of those. Florida had a lot of those in the late 90s.
Yeah, except back then in the law, he would have been fine. That's
He
what
would have
the
been
whole
fine,
argument behind
yes,
anchor
but
babies was.
there's another factor I didn't say with a
Okay.
lot of these cases. These people did not go through customs. They did not go through normal channels to get to the United States. So since they entered illegally, it made their cases more difficult.
Well, yeah, but that's an error on his part, and
Yeah.
that's not following a specific law.
Right, but I've been around friends who, like, their parents are talking in code about how they have a relative living at the house and they're scared every single time that the relative goes to work because they got him here not of normal means.
Sure,
And that's something that
on the
that
same
is something I
token-
want to bring up because that is something that happened with our prison system too, because that strongly affects ICE and the prison system kind of go hand in hand in certain areas of the country in the United States, unfortunately. And that's what I was trying to bring up. So
yeah, but I mean, but I think
it's
you're
also 1101, guy. It's 1101.
yeah. I was going to say you're wandering
So-
off the point on that one, but
I'm
that's
gonna
okay.
take Yeah, I know. I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and how about we get back to what you're doing for your Springs comic while I'm
Well,
gone?
I actually am going to go to lunch, so I'm off to lunch with a
Okay.
buddy. So I'm gonna go do that, and I will see you
Okay,
later, my friend,
see you later.
and have a good evening. And so we're out there on some of this, and I was thinking tonight. We're probably I got talking. Well, no, I didn't get talking. The reason the Springs comic is taking so long is because I'm having fun drawing the spaceship. Wrong with that. I enjoy drawing spaceships, so I'm not going to knock it. We did fine. Then it'll take me another extra hour to draw this comic. That's not going to be a big deal. So I will talk to you all later, and until then, keep your eyes on the star.